With an 8-mark compare question, you're going to be asked to compare two events or two people and look for similarities. If it's an 8-mark question, it's supposed to take about 10 minutes. What the mark scheme is looking for to get a level 1, which is up to 2, is just if you can make a very simple comparison without much detailed evidence. For level 2 up to level 3, you're looking for a strong comparison, exposing similarities between the two events. One paragraph would be a level 2 up to 4 marks. If you can have 2 similarities, it will be a level 3 up to 6 marks. For a level 4, at least one of your paragraphs must be what they call complex. And hopefully I'm going to show you what I mean by complex as I do my answer now. So you've got the two things you're asked to compare in this question are the Viking invasions of Britain and the 100 Years' War. And you're looking for try and find some things that were similar about them. And a way to maybe start your planning is sometimes to think of these categories. You know, did they have a similar impact in terms of the economics? How was there an economic change to England? Secondly, you could think, was there a social change, something to do with the lives of ordinary people, perhaps? Religious. So if you think about some of the categories, that might help plan your answer. In this case, I think I want to talk about the fact that there was an economic impact on England from the 100 Years' War and the Viking invasions, and I think I can find a comparison there. But the other one I'd like to talk about is identity, and that is crucial to the whole course, how the notion of English identity changes. And I think in that, writing about identity, you find your complex ideas, because identity takes in lots of things, from language to culture and various things like that. So I think there's complex ideas within identity that would get you up to that level 4. So that is what I'd like to do now and write that answer. So I'm looking to try and get right up to a level 4 in this answer. Okay. So I'm going to start thinking about those two things. So where's my planning? So economic, so I'll just get rid of those. Well, simply, there was an economic impact. 100 Years' War. Short term, there were some economic gains as the English stole from the French and could ransom French nobles for money. But in the long term, of course, it was a costly series of wars, and of course England loses her French lands, and of course that is costly for England as well. In terms of the Viking invasions, well, again, there are costs to Anglo-Saxon England, especially in terms of Danegeld, which has to be paid in order to prevent continuing attacks, and also, of course, lost land, Danelaw. Right, if I'm thinking about identity, I think there's a lot here. The fact that English identity changes as a result of these two events. The first thing, if we talk about the Vikings, well, the idea of England is, if you like, formed by the invasions. Why? Because Alfred sort of unites the Anglo-Saxons in response, and in some ways he becomes the first king of England as a result. And England comes from this idea of Angleland, and this comes because before there were Anglo-Saxon kingdoms, after which there is a sort of more unified Anglo-Saxon front against the Danes. So that's the idea of England being formed. The second thing, you might also say that, of course, Alfred promotes the English language as a response. The second thing to worth bearing in mind then, if we think about 100 Years' War, is again, the idea of England changes, because from the Normans onwards you have this Anglo-French monarchy, which sees itself as partly French, partly English, and the language at court is French. But actually what the 100 Years' War does is it breaks this connection, and so you see kings considering themselves to be English, not Anglo-French. And again, that changes in terms of the language that's spoken at court. So there's some complex ideas in there. So I think if you move those two things together, you're definitely going to get 8 marks. So I'm going to write it now, so you can see how I'd write it. So sentence starters, turning the question on its head. One similarity was that both brought economic changes. The Anglo-Saxon leaders paid Danegeld to stop invasions from Vikings and lost land. Whilst there were some short-term gains in the 100 Years' War, e.g. ransoms paid for French nobles. In the longer term, the wars, I should say, were expensive and French land was lost. Okay, next one. Another similarity was that each conflict shaped English identity. King Alfred became, in one sense, the first English king, as he united the Saxons against the Viking invaders, and promoted the English language. The 100 Years' War helped to break the Anglo-French connection that had existed since the Norman invasion. English kings stopped using French, and there was a growth in pride in English identity after victories such as Agincourt. And I think that gives us 2 paragraphs with some complex ideas in that would certainly merit an 8 out of 8.